This is the Thoughtful Travel Podcast. I'm your host, Amanda Kendall of the notaballerina.com travel blog. Every episode I'll share travel tales from several fellow travel lovers, and together we hope to entertain and inspire you, remind you of some of your own great travel experiences, and encourage you to hit the road again soon. Hello and welcome to episode 137 of the Thoughtful Travel Podcast. Today we have what I think is a really interesting episode. It's about depression and travel. So it came up when I was interviewing Megan Blandford recently, who's recently published a book, which is partly about her experiences with postnatal depression, and we started to chat about her experiences of depression while she was travelling, and I thought this is really interesting and it deserves a whole episode. So I found a couple of other willing volunteers to chat about their experiences, and here it is. So obviously today we're going to be talking about depression. So just a quick warning in case you're not feeling up to hearing other people talk about their depression, or if you're worried it could be triggering, then please feel free to pause right here and wait for next week's episode, or go back and listen to one of the old ones. I won't mind at all. And I'm also going to list some resources for those experiencing depression or who know people who are. I'll list them both at the end of the show and in the show notes. And the show notes are at notaballerina.com/137. So, from my reading of experiences that people had with depression and the people I talked to today, it seems like it can go one of two ways. So, travelling can sometimes be stressful, and that could make depression worse, or for other reasons, your depression could worsen while you're travelling. Or, travelling can be kind of a brilliant distraction, and you can reframe things, and your experience of depression can improve, or it can even completely lift. So, who knows? But in today's episode, I do talk with three travel lovers who have experienced depression, and hopefully their experiences about how depression and travel work together. Hopefully their experiences are both enlightening for everyone with or without depression. I found it even just fascinating anyway. And hopefully inspiring for those who experience depression and are not sure whether they should travel. But I would say you need to be prepared and do talk to your doctor or mental health professional before you travel if you have any concerns about travelling with depression. So before we get on to my first guest, I do need to quickly mention this episode's sponsor, which is my very own travel journal school. So in June, there'll be a 2-week course called Start a Personal Travel Blog. So if you've been thinking of trying to blog while you travel so that you can share your experiences with friends and family back home, or just to have a great memory of it, then this course might be for you. Head over to traveljournalschool.com and you can sign up to get the information when it's released. So I look forward to having you there. Now, on to my first guest today. I chatted with Justin Watson, who's a very active and lovely member of the Thoughtful Travellers Facebook group, and he kindly volunteered to speak about his experiences of travel and depression.
I guess I was diagnosed with depression, I think it was about 10 years ago now. And I had already started doing significant amounts of travel at that stage. I'd done a few sort of tours and a couple of solo trips myself. But I didn't really, it was one thing I truly loved. So when I was talking to my psychologist at the time, my psychologist had no issues with me going overseas and travelling, because you look at insurance and the insurance companies will say that's one of the pre-existing conditions. So there's always that concern that if you've got depression, can you travel overseas?
Right, yeah. I never thought of that bit.
Yeah, so and my, discussing with my psychologist, and she's said, look, it's something you really like doing, so maybe you should go on a trip and see how you go. Mm-hmm. And as I found out, actually traveling helped me, with all the tools that I was given to try and beat depression, came in and it helped me deal with all of that, because one of the things that my brain was telling me was, you kind of outsmart yourself, and your brain kind of says, those people don't like you, those people think you're this, those people think you're that. When you're traveling by yourself, your brain can try and tell you those things, but the people there don't know you. So,
so they can't possibly have that opinion.
So yeah, and I'm a very logical person. So, that can't possibly occur. And so that was one of the things that helped me. So, and another issue I had was that I didn't like to be seen as a I'm just trying to think of like a depend on people and things like that, because I just thought I'd just make their time more miserable or things like that.
Yeah, right.
So, but when I'm traveling by myself, solo, you kind of beat that as well, because you're not depending on anyone else. You can only depend on yourself. Nobody's got to look out for you. You're not a burden to anyone when you're just on your own, are you? That's right. You're not a burden to anyone when you're traveling. So, other than yourself, you make those decisions on the fly, and it's very easy I find it very easy to make decisions when I'm the only person involved. So yeah. And I guess the third thing that I found really easy and travel to be beneficial is that a lot of the tools given to people with depression are like mindfulness techniques and being in the moment and observing what's around you and things like that. And there's nothing better for mindfulness than being in a beautiful, amazing place where you've never been before, and and that's all you're thinking about is, wow, how amazing is this, or how amazing is this food I'm eating? And one of the first places I can think of where I did something like this was I went to Iguazu Falls, and that was, I think it was around one of my birthdays, and I went there and they have a moonlight tour at night.
Oh, wow.
It was absolutely amazing, but the weird thing was the place was full of couples going for a romantic evening out. But that didn't matter because the place was at night under a full moon. You could see the falls under the full moon. And the other thing is it helped you meet the two or three other single people who thought this was a good idea but never thought what are the sort of people who are going to come and visit Iguazu Falls by moonlight. So you all kind of gravitated and hung out with people that were also there by themselves. So it was good because you got to meet some people and chat to people and obviously nobody likes to disturb a couple, gazing lovingly into each other's eyes.
True.
Single guy
by the moonlight.
Single person just looking at the waterfalls and under the moonlight. You could say, hey, how you going, and have a chat, and everything was good. Awesome. So yeah, that was one of those, and just I did a fair bit of travel in South America and Argentina, and that was kind of the first main trip I did after I had depression. Like I did, went walking on a glacier, and the whole time you're not thinking about your depression or what your mind is trying to tell you, because you're thinking of everything else. You're thinking about how beautiful the place is, how tired I was from walking on this glacier all day, and things like that. And so eventually it just gave me that opportunity to practice the techniques that I was given, and practice the skills that I was given by the psychologist, because I don't know what other people are like, but for me it's like right now, I wouldn't say I've got depression or anything like that, but I'm always got to remind myself when I'm having a bad day to use those skills again. So I don't know that necessarily you ever get, like people like to say, oh, you're cured and things like that. I don't think that's the case, but the better you get at your mindfulness techniques and things like that, and the more practice you get at that, which I probably attribute travel to being the ideal environment to practice those things.
So I did find it really interesting that some of the things I love most about travel, the fact that you are completely away from your normal routine and in a different environment, and often out in nature as well, that those very things were very helpful to Justin in dealing with his depression and managing to and to improve his mood significantly by the sounds of it. So there you go. Travel can have a big impact. Now, my next guest is Megan Blandford. Now, I've known Megan for many years. Some time back, she ran a great travel blog as well, and we've met a few times at pro blogger conferences over in the east coast of Australia. And we had a long chat. We chatted about how anxiety and depression are different and very confusing to have together. And Megan's going to talk more about anxiety in an upcoming episode. But in this chat, we talked about depression and how she dealt with it, or perhaps let's say how she didn't deal with it when she was travelling, and the impact that depression had on some of her travel.
So an example I was going to tell you about was when my eldest child was about 18 months old and we went to Samoa. And we went there with friends. It was amazing. You know, we went with two other couples, and one of these couples also, they had a couple of young children, and we had our daughter, and this was going to be amazing. You know, we're all perfect. Staying in this resort together. We hired a little, like a van, and we travelled around Samoa together. It was amazing.
Sounds great.
However, I had postnatal depression, which so I should say I believe I had postnatal depression. I wasn't diagnosed at the time.
Right.
Because I was completely unable to face up to it in hindsight. So I was in the depths of just, you know, like a duck paddling, you know, trying to appear completely on the surface because I'm fine. But underneath, just working so hard to keep that appearance going and to convince myself and everyone else that I'm okay. I can do this. So we're there in Samoa and having this amazing experience, and I had this complete numbness. I could not enjoy it all. I just had a real lack of joy, and I think that really highlighted to me that things weren't okay, things weren't right. So I guess traveling with something like depression, it was really not easy. It wasn't easy, but it was easier for me in my day-to-day life to hide it away, to hide it from myself and from the people around me, because you can just you can throw yourself into your routine and you can just keep busy.
And you can justify it a bit, like I'm the mother of a young child, life's busy, life's not supposed to be full of fun now. But if you're vacationing in beautiful Samoa and you're still not happy, then something is wrong.
It becomes obvious. So it's like, exactly. Like you say, I'm probably not expected to be, you know, or you can tell yourself that you're probably not expected to be over the moon thrilled with life when you're running around after a toddler.
Yeah.
You can tell yourself that, and you can kind of hide from the reality. But you go to this amazing place. You're there with friends. This is meant to be amazing. I think it was, you know, I was about to turn 30, and so it was a bit of a, you know, celebration. Another friend was about to turn 30, and so we were all there together, and we were like, this is a great celebration, and this is going to be really fun. And I could see that everyone was having fun. And I could see that I was trying to, but I just couldn't feel it. And so I would go back to our room with my little one, and I would just cry. And I'd just be, you know, just thinking, what's going on? This doesn't feel right. And yet, okay, now it's time to go back out there with my friends. All right, here we go. And put that mask back on. And, wow, how amazing is this? You know, putting up that front.
Saying all the right things but not feeling it.
But not feeling it. And so I guess there are quite a few instances over the years because I kept this up for quite a long time.
Right.
This act. So there are quite a few instances of me, I guess, being jolted into, no, Megan, no, this is not right.
Mm-hmm.
You should be feeling something here. You know, you used to feel this way when you travelled and you're not feeling it now. There's something that's not right.
Oh, that's interesting, yeah. It makes a lot of sense because it's such a contrast to everyday life. So you know that you should, you know how you should feel. And it's if it doesn't match up to those expectations, something's wrong.
Yeah. And so I would do things as well. Like I would plan very high adrenaline things. I don't know if you remember this from my blogging days, Amanda. I would, people would go, wow, Megan is so adventurous.
Yes, absolutely. Yes.
Yeah, let's do that. Let's do the next thing. Sure, I'm going to jump off that cliff with a parasailing or whatever. Paragliding, I should say. I'm going to go rock climbing and I'm going to go do this. And I was doing all of this stuff. And I would never have done that beforehand. Not in a million years. And now that I feel much better, I'm not inclined to do any of that stuff.
Oh, interesting.
But at the time, so looking back, I think that I was kind of looking for, like I say, I was very numb. So I think I was looking for some way to feel something.
Mm-hmm.
So that, and that's a really unexpected, it's only in hindsight that I can see that. At the time I thought, I'm just adventurous now. That's cool.
Yes, exactly. I was always quite in awe of all your adventurous things that you did.
Yeah, I wouldn't do that now. No way. But looking back, I really think that I was looking, I did those things through some of my lowest points.
Right.
And I think I was trying to feel something.
Yeah.
And so, I guess it's this thing with depression where you tend to think of someone with depression as, well, they can't get out of bed or they're not going to be off travelling. They're certainly not going to be out doing these adventurous experiences. However, depression hits different people in different ways and in different forms. And I think for me, it was all about trying to keep up that act, and it was all about trying to feel something. And,
that makes a lot of sense. I mean, in retrospect, it makes a lot of sense. But yeah, wow.
I actually found every aspect of this chat with Megan utterly fascinating. It was especially interesting when she told me about those kind of high adrenaline, big adventurous activities that she did. I remember at the time when she did those thinking, oh, wow, she's amazing. I can't do anything like that. And to hear that actually it was kind of all a result of depression and trying to make her feel something, is amazing. And Megan, you did an amazing job of covering up for all those years. And having read your book now, I'm glad that you don't anymore. But it's, well worth reading the book, I think, everyone. I'll mention it more in the show notes at the end. But, I'm really grateful, Megan, to have that interesting insight into how it can be when you travel with depression. As is the same from my final guest today, Ian Oliver, the barefoot backpacker. Now, I've known Ian for years now online. We actually met late last year, when he was travelling in Australia. And he has some experiences of depression or of a low mood from time to time, and was also really open in explaining some of what happens both at home and while he's travelling.
It happens when I'm travelling and when I'm not travelling. It happens sort of equally, but it's more frustrating when it happens when you're travelling, because I feel like I'm somewhere and I need to be doing something and I should be doing something and I'm not doing anything because I'm just sat here capable of doing something. Whereas obviously when I'm at home and I have the same problems, it's a case of, well, I ought to be doing something, like going out and buying food or writing a blog post or something. But I mean, I do both of those things when I travel as well. So
but it's a bit different, isn't it? When you're away, I imagine you want to make the most of it, don't you?
Yes, absolutely. Although, given the way I tend to travel these days is relatively long term, so you're talking sort of months instead of weeks, it kind of feels like I'm at home part of the time. One of the recent places I visited was Nepal, so I had, a week and a half in the country, and I had about 5 days in Pokhara. So having 5 days in one place feels like I'm kind of living there for a week. And because Hokora isn't that big, I felt I could do everything I wanted to do in the time I had, which means I had time to, relax and write blog posts and stuff like that. But what happens is that I will, and it's happened to me recently at home actually. So I'll wake up and then I'll go, I need to do something today. And then I'll stay in bed because I can't get up. Or if I do, I'll sort of sit on it happened that I sat on my bed for 2.5 hours the other day, because I needed to go out. I needed to get food. I needed to just do something, but I couldn't. And saying I didn't want to is probably the bad phrase. It was literally that I just couldn't bring myself to do it. So I ended up sitting on my bed for 2.5 hours on Twitter because it was easier than going out. And sometimes that's what happens. I find, because I get easily distracted by things, possibly I'm not saying on purpose. I so need Ritalin. I always find it easier to do nothing, and knowing that about myself gets me kind of irked because I know I've constantly got this thing in my head of I need to be doing something because if I don't do anything, I'll starve, die, that sort of thing.
Yeah, not achieve what you want to achieve, and so on.
Yeah. But it's also manifested in terms of because I got made redundant last year, so I have a large redundancy payout. But I know that I'm spending far too much of it on things like, going to the supermarket. Oh, get something from the deli counter because it's only like £3. And I do that quite often. Or, going to the pub and spending £10 on beer every night.
Travelling.
Travelling is actually cheaper. I spend less money when I travel than when I stay at home. Interesting.
Yes, that's probably true. Living in the UK, yeah.
Yeah, well, there's two reasons for that. One is because the UK is horrendously expensive. Three reasons, actually. Two, because it's just so easy to spend money here because I've got nothing else to do.
Right.
And three, I budget. Well, I don't budget so much when I travel. It's that I make a note of my spending, so I'm consciously aware of how much I am spending when I travel, and I don't do that. So I consciously spend less when I travel.
Yes,
but it's mainly because Britain's so horrendously expensive.
Yeah, exactly. So if you're feeling down when you're traveling, what gets you out of that? Is it, do you eventually kind of reach the place where you're feeling, I really want to see Nepal, so I will get off this bed and I will get going? Is it easier when you travel compared to being at home?
I think it depends on what the issue is. There have been situations, and it happened in Australia, where I was in a funk, and the thing that got me out of it was literally moving somewhere else. So the very act of changing my location sometimes brings me back into a more sort of happy mindset. Happy is probably the wrong word.
But it's a bit of a clean slate, and you leave that low mood behind in the previous destination and move on and onwards and upwards kind of thing.
Yes, very, very much so.
Right.
So that's the main one.
So while Ian said sometimes moving to the next destination gives him a clean slate and he can continue, we went on later in our chat to talk about something that had happened to him in Ethiopia and has happened to him a couple of times when he travels. And it's particularly when travel can be quite stressful, especially if you don't know the language and everything works in a different way. You go into a place to buy food, but you don't know whether you order first or sit down first or, all of those kind of local customs. And he found in Ethiopia he was not coping well and ended up going home back to the UK early. So sometimes that's also a sensible choice, I think, if you're travelling and experiencing depression. Anyway, that is it for my 3 guests for this very special episode of the Thoughtful Travel podcast. I hope you found it useful and interesting. I certainly found it fascinating, and more so than usual, I'm particularly grateful to my guests for being so open in sharing their experiences with me. I really appreciate it. So another big thank you to all 3 of you. Let me give you some links. So remember, I did promise some links and resources to get help with depression. I've just got them for the 4 main countries where my listeners come from. So for Australia, Beyond Blue at beyondblue.org.au or Lifeline, lifeline.org.au are both very helpful. In the UK, and these ones I've got through the Thoughtful Travellers Facebook group, I asked for some help. So thank you to everyone who chipped in with some country-specific help. So the NHS has a really interesting mood zone page in the UK. So if you just Google NHS mood zone, and the link's in the show notes. And also Mind, the mental health charity, at mind.org.uk is got lots of useful information as well. In the US, mentalhealthamerica.net looks to have some helpful stuff. And in Germany, Deutsche Depressionshilfe.de also looks good. All of those links are in the show notes at notaballerina.com/137, as are links to my wonderful, fabulous guests today, and a link to traveljournalschool.com if you're interested in joining my course, Start a Personal Travel Blog, which is in June 2019. If you're listening at another time, just head to traveljournalschool.com anyway, and you'll find out what's happening at the moment. A big thank you to Justin, who you can find at his blog, justins.world. Also thanks to Megan, who you can find at meganblandford.net. Her book, I'm Fine and Other Lies, is about postnatal depression and motherhood, and it's just, I found it utterly fascinating. I have never suffered, fortunately, from postnatal depression, but it was just a really beautifully written book and very interesting to help you understand the dilemmas of anyone who does. So I highly recommend it. As far as I can see, it's available in Australia only at the moment, but I'm going to check with Megan on that, and I will put a note in the Facebook group and in the show notes as well. And also thanks to Ian, who is at barefoot-backpacker.com, and he also has a podcast, a great podcast, Travel Tales from Beyond the Brochure, so do go and listen to some of those episodes. And as I said, all of that's at notaballerina.com/137. And the best place on the internet is to come and join our Thoughtful Travellers Facebook group. It is truly a wonderful, supportive group of like-minded travel lovers. So just search for Thoughtful Travellers in Facebook or head to the link in the show notes. Thank you very much for bearing with me through this long list here. I wanted to make sure I had those depression resources in there as well. So thank you very, very much for listening. This has been another episode of the Thoughtful Travel Podcast. Show notes and other information are at notaballerina.com/podcast. Join me again soon for another chat about why we travel. Bye for now.